Welcome, Gun Runner.
Hello everybody, Q and AK the Laird here, and I've got a hardware review for you, and I've not done one of these for absolutely ages, literally because I haven't had time more than anything, because hardware reviews actually probably take the longest to set up and film, in terms of finding all my stuff as well, because most of my retro gear is in storage, so it's often difficult to get it all out to sort it. And I've had loads I want to do, I just haven't got around to doing them, because finding the time to film like this is becoming increasingly difficult because of my my day job. My workload is so high these days that it's difficult, and obviously getting things like the right light and stuff to do them, and that's weird because the camera's just moved by itself. There we go. Apologies for that. But yeah, I wanted to do this one for some time, so I'm glad I finally got round to it, because it's a bit different to my usual hardware reviews. I did do a video a bit like this before, however, because you might remember, if you followed my channel for a long time, that I did a video looking at the Master System 1 and Master System 2 together, which went down quite well. I quite enjoyed doing that one, and I tend not to do videos on really mainstream systems, as people who follow my channel know. They really like it when I cover the more obscure stuff, and actually the more obscure the thing I'm covering, especially in terms of hardware, the better it seems to do, actually. I think that's because not so many people have done videos on them. But yeah, with the Master System, I sort of took a different way of doing it, and I'm doing the same with this one. And the camera kept moving again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Oh, really annoying. Keeps slipping out. But there we go. So yes, so we're going Mega Drive 2, Mega Drive 1. So kind of a hardware review, but also a hardware comparison, because I'm going to be telling you the differences between the two, because I don't think they're as widely known as they should be. And yeah, we're going to look at all of that. So I've got the boxes here as well. That is actually at the back there. That's the box for my Asian Ntsc Mega Drive. It's actually I'd say Asian, it's not a Japanese. It's I think the label on it says it's like for Singapore, Malaysia, so it's that region, Hong Kong. So it's Asian and it's multi-region. It has no restrictions on it. It will play Ntsc games and it will play PAL games. And it's absolutely wonderful. It's quite a sought after version of the Mega Drive for that reason, because it has no region restrictions on it and will play games from anywhere. And I got it for 50 quid with a load of games from a game shop in Dunstable, which has long since closed down, unfortunately. But the owner was brilliant. He actually called me up and told me that he had it, and I went down and got it. He was absolutely awesome. That guy was Mark, who run Games Monkey in Dunstable. Really good little shop that was. It's such a shame it's gone, but there we go. That's another story. But for the actual model here, I have grabbed a PAL Mega Drive, which I also have, because then I can compare PAL with PAL, like for like. But I thought it was nice to see that box in the background, along with a PAL box for the Mega Drive 2. Both boxes in very good condition as well, as you can see. Actually, the price label on that box up there says $109.99 from Software Plus, and I thought that was really cool, because Software Plus was my go-to game shop for a long time back in the day. They had one in the Maltings in St Albans that I used to visit regularly. They also had a branch in Luton, so perhaps that came from one of those two. But because they did a lot of import stuff, but Software Plus was amazing. So that was really cool to see that label on the box with the price on it. So let's have a look. So let's start with the old Mega Drive 1. So this is obviously the original model. And this is, as I say, is the PAL one, and the Japanese Mega Drive, as you can see, has a slightly different look to it. You can see there by looking side by side, bigger 16-bit writing, red instead of white, blue reset button instead of a white one. I prefer the look of the PAL one; it's a bit more understated. And then, of course, there's the American Genesis. I'll pop a picture of that up in the top right-hand corner, which has the big Genesis writing on it because they had to change the name for America because the Mega Drive name is taken. Long story that I'm sure you know all about. But I think the PAL one, I do think of the three, looks the nicest. I dislike the Genesis the most because I think I don't like the big writing on it. And I much prefer the Mega Drive name. The Mega Drive is such a better name than Genesis. There's a very interesting story behind the Genesis name, so I'll link that in the comments and in the top right-hand corner if you don't know that story, because it is very, very cool. So yes, here we go. Very iconic design. I think it's one of the best looking consoles ever, if not the best looking. I think it's a magnificent design with that circular bit and the big 16-bit, showing off obviously that it was the first proper 16-bit console. Nice cartridge slot with the flaps. Your volume button for stereo sound with your headphone socket underneath. Reset on off, those kind of bits on the side that don't do anything, but it looks cool. On the back, we've got our extension port, we've got RGB SCART socket, RF out, and power. And take note of that because we're going to go back to what's there in a moment. Now, obviously on the front, you had your joystick ports there, or joypad ports, should I say. On the side there, I've already taken the bit off. That's for connecting up Mega CD. That's the proper big expansion port. And then obviously some bit on the back there about it. So that's our there's a screw hole there actually, so you could connect a plate to the bottom as well for if you're using it with the Mega CD 2. I've actually got a Mega CD review in my pile of ones to do. Actually, I will get around to doing Mega CD at some point. It's another good one to do. But there we go. That's the Mega Drive 1. So the Mega Drive 2. Now, it's obviously a lot smaller. First of all, so I should mention briefly actually, the Mega Drive 1 was obviously Japan 98, USA 1990, Europe 1991 release date. The Mega Drive 2 and subsequent Genesis 2 were 1993, so a few years later, just as the sort of next generation of consoles was starting to arrive. Much like Sega did with the Master System 2, obviously they did the redesign. Atari did with the 2600 Junior. And in many ways this was similar because it was designed to appeal to a younger audience. So it'd be cheaper and cheaper to manufacture, cheaper to buy, and feature a number of cost reduction measures and stuff like that the kind of, I don't know, hardcore gamers wouldn't be so worried about in many ways. So obviously I've gone through obviously there is quite a big size difference in terms of how long it is. The height is barely different at all. It is a bit thinner as well, which you can probably see there. But push that to one side a minute. So this has got on the top is power and reset, rather than an on-off switch. And first thing you'll notice is the volume control is gone, and there's no headphone socket. There's just the two joypad sockets. So yeah, that's the first difference between the two. On a hardware level, there is no stereo sound on the Mega Drive 2, which is very unfortunate. That's not a good thing. And I've also found that the sound quality in general on the Mega Drive 2 isn't as good. Apparently there is ways to fix that by modding it, but yeah, it's not as good. There's the back, and this has the port as well on the side there. It's actually still got the cover and everything on it, this one, for your Mega CD. Can't get that to go back on now. I'll leave it to one side for a minute because I can't get it to go back on. And then on the back, there is just power and AV out, it's worded as. and you'll notice it's not RF, and you'll notice it's not RGB SCART. It has to use its own special cable. I think I've got that here actually somewhere, because there was the famous Sega switch boxes that they always did, so you could plug your TV and your console in at the same time. The earlier versions actually had a switch on, but these later versions don't. They just both connect at once. But there we go. There's our one that goes into the back, and then it's a standard RF connector that goes into your TV on the other end. So yeah, there's no RGB SCART, so your picture quality is dramatically reduced on the Mega Drive 2 as well. Nowhere near as good picture quality. The plastic is much cheaper. You can even tell it by just sort of, I mean, listen, it's really rattly, and you can feel that it's just cheaper in general. It's quite a nice design, but yeah, you know, if you're serious about the Mega Drive and collecting, you need to have a Mega Drive 1, because it's better made. It's got better sound quality, better video output. It's just better all round in every regard. The only real advantage I think of this is that it takes up less space. But I will say actually, is that this looks really cool with the Mega CD 2, because the Mega CD 2 fits alongside it, and looks really good, and it looks like it makes it like it's all one console rather than the Mega CD 2 being an add-on. Whereas with the Mega Drive 1, because the Mega CD sat underneath it and was absolutely massive, you know, it raised it up. I can remember my friend who got a Mega CD, and he had this little shelving TV unit that he kept his Mega Drive on, and then when he got the Mega CD on the bottom of it, he couldn't fit it on the shelf, because with a cartridge in the top of the Mega Drive as well, it was too tall, because it added so much height to it. So that was a right bummer. So yeah, that's the main hardware differences there, covered I think quite quickly and quite succinctly. So now you know all those differences. And then there was obviously other issues as well when you got the 32X, because they had to be connected up in different ways as well. The 32X had on, of course. And I did mention it before, actually. I'll just go back to it for a second. You can use the Mega CD 2 with the Mega Drive 1. You need this special plate and extender, so it will still fit on the side and slots onto it correctly, because of the strange height difference between the two and stuff. So you need this raising plate. And quite often they're missing. The actual plates to use that you need to screw onto the Mega Drive 1 are harder to find. So if you're going to get a Mega CD 2 to use the Mega Drive 1, it looks odd. I don't like using the mismatch like that. You need to make sure you've got that special plate and extender part as well to put on the side of it. The Mega CD 1 will not work with the Mega Drive 2, obviously, because it doesn't fit properly. So yeah, let's have a look at some of the games. Obviously, there's a huge games library for the Mega Drive. Unbelievable. I think there's close to 1,000 games when you start, obviously, adding like these sort of Asian bootleg releases and unofficial stuff in there, with the large commercial libraries that came out in Europe and America and Japan, of course. So I think we're looking close to 1,000 games when you start adding on aftermarket releases as well. Of course, they're still very, very well supported with homebrew games as well, because it was such a popular system, being one of the the best-selling consoles of all time. But what I wanted to do is look at the kind of timeline of the games, because I thought that might be interesting, because again, it shows a difference. So the original Mega Drive games looked like this, and came in these incredibly cool boxes, because the Master System had the white with the black checker pattern, and the Mega Drive reversed it, so the back is black and the lines, well, they're not really white, they're more grey, but it kind of reversed that pattern, but put more attention on the image. And actually, they changed the Master System artwork to look more like the Mega Drive artwork, which was a good thing, because the early Master System artwork, as you probably know, was bloody awful, laughable in fact. So yes, they carried that round, so you got the same pattern along the side, then logo and everything, and then obviously this is a PAL box, so the language on the back is multi-language with screenshots. I have got actually a Genesis one here. Weirdly, the sticker says European Club Soccer, so I must have swapped, or someone swapped the box over at some point. Now, actually, it's got a Street Fighter 2 sticker there as well. How strange, I didn't notice that. I'll have to change that box over. I've got loads of spare boxes, but I just noticed that. Anyway, yeah, you'll see it's virtually the same. It's just the difference is the logo at the top is now Genesis instead of Mega Drive. The picture is a little bit smaller. You notice it takes the checker pattern around the top and side. And at the bottom, actually, it doesn't say the 16-bit cartridge bit. That's incorporated into the Genesis logo at the top instead. But we still have that same checkerboard pattern, though I think the squares look slightly larger. And then, obviously, on the back, it's all in English with the Genesis boxes. So it's a little bit different on the back. But they're virtually the same boxes. But I loved that early design, because when you put them on the shelf, they look brilliant, because they're all uniform. And I was bloody annoyed when they changed the design, because then they weren't uniform. And actually, one thing they actually did as well, which is slightly annoying, is I don't know if I've got a few here. I don't know if it's the same with these. Actually, you can see it with these two. Is they changed the Mega Drive design, logo design slightly on the side of the boxes, and made it slightly larger later on, as you can see there. It's smaller on the old one. Larger, and I don't know why they bloody did that. It was really annoying. And they used a slightly different Mega Drive logo on some of the later games as well. But I do wish they hadn't messed around so much with that. But then the other early difference we saw with the Mega Drive boxes was obviously EA, who decided to have their own. It's an interesting story if you want to read up on it, how they came up to have their own games and cartridges. But again, I've got actually again, I can do a PAL and Ntsc comparison. So there's PAL Road Rash 2, and there is an Ntsc, or Genesis, should I say, actually, it's not a Japanese one, Road Rash 1. So they used bigger, thicker boxes. I don't know if you can see that easily from the side. They were slightly thicker than the Sega boxes. Obviously, quite a radically different design all the way round. But the biggest thing, of course, with these was the cartridges. And I've grabbed a spare cartridge here, because they were completely different. They were taller. They had these bespoke EA bits on the side, the longer labels. And the carts, actually, they didn't change them for region. They're all the same, unlike the normal Mega Drive carts. But if I grab a normal Mega Drive one, put it alongside there, you can see the Mega Drive cart is wider, the actual Mega Drive cart. And that's obviously because, depending on the region, obviously the Japanese one had rounded sides, where they have the curved sides. It's a slightly different design. But yeah, and they're taller, as you can see there as well, much taller. So quite a radically different design. They weren't the only people who had their own cartridges. I'll mention that now, before anyone starts shouting at the screen to point it out, because later on we also saw the Codemasters cartridges, which look completely different like this. There's also the Codemasters J carts, which I do have. Maybe I should have grabbed one, but they have 2 joystick ports in the top of the cartridge, so you can plug 2 more joypads in to play 4-player rather than using a 4-player adapter. I thought the J cart was a brilliant idea. So there's a Codemasters one. Again, they're probably the smallest cartridges of all, actually. And I've got another one here. I've got a Ballistic cartridge, or Accolade Ballistic, same company. Who are another. Originally, their games weren't official. They had a big Barney with Sega, so they made their own cartridges. That's how they came to make their own. Later on, they did get official licensing when they. And I think at that point they changed their using the Ballistic name and went back to the traditional Accolade name, which is what they were known as on other systems. There we go, Winter Challenge. So compare that to an EA cart, it's actually very similar, almost exactly the same size and a similar design. So there's some different cartridges. But most of the cartridges from third-party publishers were the same as the Sega ones, with that wraparound label. Exactly the same design. I've also got a couple more boxes, so I'll just show you actually quickly a Japanese box. Say it like this. You'll notice that a lot more attention is put to the artwork on the Japanese boxes. They made that the focus, very much so, because it also continues onto the back in many cases. Beautiful fantasy style artwork on this one, of course. But what that means is, and Japanese text on the side is, they're all different colours, they're all different art. So on the shelf, a lot of people say that they prefer the Japanese ones because they like the artwork better. But I don't, because I don't like that they're not uniform on the shelf. When you put them on the shelf, they're all odd. They don't match each other. Different Mega Drive logo, of course, for Japan as well. They had that kind of MD thing. But yeah, so I still prefer, of all, the original checkerboard PAL boxes because they look the best on the shelf. That's the OCD in me. But then we had later boxes. So with the Mega Drive 2, they decided to change the look of the boxes. So I said there were some minor revisions, but with the Mega Drive 2, they totally changed to this blue design, which actually does look very cool as well. And again, looks cool on the shelf. This is actually a third-party blue. Obviously, they took that blue, and it's kind of spotted there in the background. So it looked really cool down the side, and then obviously multi-language on the back. And the America this time got totally different, because where we got blue in PAL, North America got red. So they got red Genesis, and you'll see they got stripes instead of the spotted design in the background. So there's a US Mortal Kombat. So if you're in North America, you've got these bright red boxes instead. I really dislike the colour red on in general, because I'm a Spurs fan, so in Arsenal, our arch rivals wear reds. That's one reason why I hate red. Never red, as us Spurs fans say. So I don't really like the red, these red Genesis boxes. I think they're really garish. Don't like the colour, don't like how they look. Again, I think PAL wins there by far. I think they look much better, the PAL boxes. And actually, something good I kind of grab on and open it actually is the box itself. I loved the fact that Mega Drive used clamshell boxes, plastic clamshell boxes, unlike most other systems had cardboard boxes that got crushed easily. So it's much easier to find Mega Drive games in good condition because they use these brilliant plastic clamshell boxes. Sometimes the covers are damaged, but it's also easy to get replacement boxes for the Mega Drive as well, because all you're doing is slotting in an inlay. And obviously you can print your own inlays as well if you want. So the Mega Drive is so much better than pretty much any system actually, from a collector's point of view. The Master System's the same obviously, because they adapted the box, almost the same type of box. Because you can print your own artwork, you can buy replacement boxes, and obviously with cardboard boxes it's not really possible. You can get repro boxes, but obviously they work out a lot more expensive, harder to print. Then obviously we'll just show the inside, because the cart fitted in that lovely bit, and then the bit to slot the instruction manuals into. Ace. And they also had the Sega sticker that sealed it on the side. They never, they never really had a plastic seal on the box. They just had the sticker seal on the side. Like cardboard games would have the actual shrink wrap. Mega Drive games never did. I worked for Game during the Mega Drive era, and all the games would come in just with the sticker seal, and we would actually plastic shrink wrap them ourselves to go on the shelf. We had a shrink wrapping machine. So before anyone argues that they did, that's because some retailers shrink wrap them themselves, but they didn't come from Sega, or in the UK's case, Virgin Mastertronic, who are the distributors. With shrink wrap that was added by retailers. And actually these later blue boxes are quite cool, because they have a better bit for the instructions to go into. I always much preferred how they did that. So that's the game boxes out of the way. I think I've well and truly covered them. Okay, so natural progression, we've looked at the console, we've looked at the games, and the next thing obviously we'd need to do would be to look at the controllers. So obviously here we have the classic 3-button controller. This is the Mega Drive 2 version. You can tell because it has a red start button, and the Mega Drive 1 version of that controller had a white, off-white coloured start button, obviously to match the console. And you can see there in the background, obviously the Japanese one there had a blue one with red coloured buttons. These Mega Drive 2 versions don't really have any colour on the buttons. The Mega Drive ones did have the letters coloured in white. But obviously this was a great controller at the time. Looked good, felt nice to hold, worked well. Very good controller, universally liked. But then, of course, the Super Nintendo came along, the Mega Drive's big rival. And one of the things that had in its favour compared to its great rival was that it had 6-button controllers. It had 4 face buttons and, of course, 2 shoulder buttons. And then it got Street Fighter 2. And Street Fighter 2 needed 6 buttons, so it had the advantage again. So what did Sega do? They released the 6-button controller, of course, which they did bundle with later versions of the Mega Drive, but quite a lot later. So a lot of people had to go out and buy these. But it's got a similar design, but you'll see it's a bit smaller. It's not quite as big as the original Mega Drive controller. It has a slightly different joypad, which is actually much looser, easier to move. It's not quite as stiff as the original one, but felt nicer, and especially good for fighting games because of the movement. And then you had 6 face buttons, which, in my opinion, was better than the Super Nintendo because this was the exact layout that you would have had with Street Fighter 2 in the arcades. Of course, the main reason why this one came out was because Street Fighter 2 then came out for the Mega Drive with a superior version, if you ask me. It was faster, had the parallax scrolling as well, which made it look better in my opinion. I thought it played better as well because you had these controllers to use with it and you didn't have to use the shoulder buttons. So these have the start button, obviously your face buttons, A, B, C, and then X, Y, and Z. But the other difference that the 6-button has is it has a button on the top there. You can see mode. And that was because some games didn't like the 6-button controller. So by pressing mode, you could change it effectively to a 3-button controller to retain that compatibility. I remember Forgotten Worlds is one game that doesn't like the 6-button controller. It's random that I remember that particular game. But yeah. But aside from that, obviously the same kind of functionality. But this, for me, is one of the best controllers ever made. It's an amazing joypad. Really is amazing. And then this would serve as the basis for the Sega Saturn controller that followed afterwards, which in my opinion is the best control pad for any system ever. It's the Sega Saturn one. And the Mega Drive, that followed on very closely from this Mega Drive 2 6-button, which is possibly the second best. Maybe. There's obviously loads of other third-party joysticks, controllers, arcade sticks, all sorts. And I've actually got quite a few different ones, but if I'd have covered them in this video, I would have been here forever. So I thought it was best to just cover the original Sega-produced joypads. They also did wireless versions as well, but they weren't so good in those early years using infrared, and the batteries didn't last as long and stuff. So the good old wired controllers were the best route. Then, of course, actually, I should mention as well, there was the Ntsc light gun. I do have one somewhere in my storage. Can't you really use them with modern TVs, and they're bloody enormous great things. I'll stick a picture of one up there. So there was other control methods as well in terms of the Ntsc light gun, which I didn't really support very well. There was the cartridge that came with it, had 6 games. There wasn't many other games that used it. The only one I can remember, funny enough, is Terminator 2, the arcade game. Quite famously supported the Ntsc gun. And that was a good conversion, actually. Very cool game. And that's the controllers. So that's pretty much it, really. I don't want to go into lots of detail on all sorts of other peripherals because they can be covered in separate videos. I didn't want to go loads into the history of the Mega Drive because that's been covered to death. This was really a comparison video looking at the Mega Drive 1 versus the Mega Drive 2, the design aesthetics of the early games as well versus the later games, and the controllers and such like. And I hope I've done that quite well and showed everyone the clear differences between the Mega Drive 1 and 2. I also like to do a kind of summary as well at the end of my videos. So though I haven't done a traditional video, I think I'll still do that here. So what I usually ask is, I say, is X console or computer worth owning in the present day? Really, I probably don't need to say that at all, do I? It's the Sega Mega Drive, for goodness sake. If you're talking about the greatest consoles ever made, then this is going to be right up there, I think, on everyone's list. I mean, if you ask me, this is the greatest console ever made. Most people obviously talk about me being an Atari fan. A lot of people say I'm biased towards Atari and I rate them over everything else. And that's not true because I've always stated that my favourite home console is the Sega Mega Drive. I had a Sega Mega Drive 1 back in the day, exactly the same as this, which I got for Christmas, joint present with my brother. And it came with Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Streets of Rage 1. And we played those games to death and I loved the Mega Drive and it stayed my main system really for playing games on until I got a Jaguar in obviously late '93. So the Mega Drive was my main system for a long time, and even after I got the Jaguar, I hung on to the Mega Drive because I had the Jaguar was my console, so I had it in my bedroom, and my brother had the Mega Drive in his room, so he still had all the Mega Drives. Still had a massive collection of games that we had. We had so many games for it. So we still enjoyed the Mega Drive for some years to come alongside the Jaguar. It was such a great console. And when I started retro collecting again in the present day, obviously the Mega Drive was one of the first consoles I bought. What the reasons why I think the Mega Drive is the greatest console of all time is, it had everything in terms of graphics and sound. It had great graphics. I love the sound of the Mega Drive. People always say that the SNES had a better sound chip. I prefer the sound of the Mega Drive sound chip personally. I don't think there's anything on the Super Nintendo that touches the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack, for example. Nothing matches that at all. The Mega Drive also had some other advantages over the Super Nintendo, like being faster. The faster processor speed had a big difference to games like Sonic the Hedgehog. And I enjoy the games library of the Mega Drive more than the Super Nintendo. The Mega Drive library, more arcade focused. Loads of obviously amazing ports of Sega arcade games in particular, which the Super Nintendo didn't have. If you like RPGs, then the Super Nintendo's better. If you like arcade games, the Mega Drive's much better. I mean, especially shoot 'em ups. There's not that many great shoot 'em ups on the Super Nintendo. There's bloody tons on the Mega Drive. There's lots of genres where I think the Mega Drive's better. I think the Mega Drive's better probably for scrolling beat 'em ups as well. Just for Streets of Rage 2, if nothing else. So yeah, I think the Mega Drive 2 is superior in a lot of ways. Massive, brilliant games library. There really is no gaps in its library, and it had the best games of its era. And it was Sega's greatest console, and it was Sega's heyday, and it's the Sega that I remember, and the Sega I know and love, and I'm still a huge Sega fan to this day. Still buy their games. Obviously, Streets of Rage 4 came out fairly recently, which was just amazing. Loved it to bits. So that's it really. I hope you enjoyed my look at the Mega Drive 1 versus the Mega Drive 2. If you'd like to see more videos like this comparing different versions of the same system, because I know, for example, I've looked at every version of the Atari 2600 separately. If you'd like a video that maybe looks at them together, that could be cool. Or with computers like the Spectrum or the Atari 8-bit or whatever. If you'd like to see more videos like that, then I'm happy to do them. But I hope you enjoyed it. I've been the Laird. I thank you for watching. I'll see you all again for another video very soon. Bye bye.